recording studio is enveloped by harsh, cold white lights casting long shadows across the floor. This space is designed to reveal the truth, or at least to make people believe they're seeing the truth. The camera lenses loom like invisible eyes, observing every expression without missing a beat. Karoline sits at the center of this scrutiny. She doesn't shrink away or cower. Her calm is like a still lake, but anyone perceptive can sense the powerful undercurrent beneath it. Across from her is Michael, a renowned journalist famous for his razor-sharp interviews, his questions dissecting his guests layer by layer, ready to strike. What will happen? Let's pull back the curtain on this story together. Karoline isn't a stranger to flashing lights or whispers behind her back. She grew up in a poor, working-class neighborhood on the outskirts, where the church was the heart of everything, where people came to beg for salvation, to flaunt their faith, or simply to avoid judgment. But for Karoline, faith wasn't a dazzling robe or a shiny cross her mother once forced her to wear every Sunday. It was something she discovered on her own during long nights sitting by her father's sickbed as he coughed up blood and begged her not to give up. In the days she worked herself to exhaustion at the factory to support her younger brother, while the world seemed to have forgotten them. At 38, she had become a local radio host, known for her heartfelt talks about life and faith, but no one knew how much she had sacrificed to stay true to herself. Michael, on the other hand, is a shark in the world of journalism. He thrives on tearing stories apart, exposing the wounds others try to hide. With 25 years of experience as an investigative reporter for a major newspaper, he takes pride in making people tremble before his microphone. To him, faith is a sham, an excuse people use to justify their mistakes or profit from the naive masses. Today, he appears live on a famous interview show with one goal: to take Karoline down. He's heard enough about this woman of faith, and he believes she's just another hypocrite, waiting to crumble under his pressure. The studio is cramped, stifling, with blinding spotlights piercing like needles into the skin. The hum of the cameras buzzes like insects in the night, and online viewers are eagerly awaiting a fiery showdown. Karoline sits in her chair, back straight, hands clenched but steady, her eyes blazing like a soldier ready for battle. The hum of the spotlights feels like a threat, slicing through the oppressive air of the studio. Michael signals for the cameras to roll, his eyes glinting like a freshly sharpened blade. He leans forward, his voice smooth but icy as frost. "Karoline," he begins, his tone like a slash. "You're famous for your sermons on faith, the foundation of your life, right? But today I look at you and what do I see? No cross? No scripture-etched necklace, no sign at all. Do you expect us to believe your faith is real, or is this just a cheap performance to gain fame from the naive masses?" His words hit like a punch to the face, and online viewers explode with comments. Karoline feels the weight of each word, not just a question, but a public accusation. Inside her, a storm surges, memories of neighbors gossiping about her for skipping church, of the times she refused to wear a cross just to please others. But she isn't weak enough to be swept into his game. She takes a deep breath, her eyes locking onto Michael like an arrow aimed straight at his heart. The silence stretches, heavy as a boulder pressing on her chest. Michael smirks, thinking he has her cornered. He leans closer, his voice now sharp as a knife cutting through the air. "Why aren't you answering, Karoline? Is silence an admission? No symbol, no proof? Your faith is just a painted lie, isn't it? Or do you think you can fool the world with that calm facade?" Karoline clenches her fists, her nails digging into her palms, but her face remains unshaken. She knows what he wants. A crack to exploit, a wound to dig deeper. But she isn't an easy target. When she speaks, her voice booms like thunder in a storm. "Michael, do you think faith is something I have to dangle around my neck like jewelry for you to photograph? Do you think it's something I need to wave like a billboard for you in the crowd out there to applaud? If you want a performance, you've come to the wrong person. My faith isn't for you to prize. It's the blood in my veins, the nights I stayed awake praying for my father to survive, the days I worked myself to the bone to feed my brother when the world abandoned us. You want proof? It's right here, in the way I stand before you, unbowed, unafraid." Her words strike back like a counterblow, sharp and unrelenting. Michael blinks, his breath catching, but he quickly regains his smug demeanor. He sneers, his voice now laced with bitter mockery. Oh, what a touching story, Caroline. But don't expect me to shed a tear. Action? You call that faith? Or is it just how you delude yourself to feel better? How do we know you're not just another hypocrite using sad stories to mask the emptiness inside? No symbols, no signs. Do you think you're above the preachers who fall from grace? The air in the room freezes, tension so thick you can hear the technician's ragged breathing. Caroline feels the attack in every word he says, but she refuses to let it break her. In her mind, images flash. Days coworkers mocked her for not praying publicly. Times she declined to donate to the church just to save money for her brother's medicine. He knows nothing about her, and she won't let him distort her truth. She stands abruptly, her chair tipping back and nearly toppling, her eyes blazing like fire consuming everything in its path. Her voice rings out, resolute and unyielding. What do you want, Michael? A cross so you can take a picture and write a hit piece on me when I'm not perfect by your standards, or a tearful breakdown so you can sell tickets to the audience out there? I'm not here to be your spectacle. My faith is in choosing to forgive the neighbor who beat my father to death over a death, in getting back up after being fired for refusing to beg for pity from others, and living true to myself even when the world calls me an outcast. You want to judge me? Go ahead, but don't expect me to kneel to fit the hypocritical frame you've built. My faith doesn't need your permission to exist. Michael freezes, his hand gripping the microphone so tightly that his knuckles turn white. He hadn't anticipated the intensity in her words, the unwavering resolve like an impenetrable steel wall. But he's not the type to give up. He leans forward, his voice now trembling with anger and desperation. You speak well, Caroline, but this world doesn't run on empty platitudes. People need to see to believe. They need proof. Do you think you can sit here offering them nothing and demand they accept it? You're no different from those who cloak themselves in faith only to flicker out when the lights dim. Do you think you're special? Do you think you can escape the judgment of the world with that arrogance? His question lands like a final shot, but Caroline doesn't flinch. She steps closer to him, just a few paces away, her eyes piercing through his smug facade like a sword. Her voice drops low, but each word strikes like a hammer. I don't demand anything from the world, Michael. I don't need you or anyone else to validate me. My faith isn't a commodity for you to price, nor a game for you to win or lose. Do you want to know what makes me different? I don't live to please the crowd. I live to do what's right. When no one's watching, when no one's clapping, when it's just me and my conscience in the dark. You say the world needs proof? I say to you, the world can look in the mirror and ask if it's lived true to itself before daring to judge me. As for me, I won't change for you, for the audience, or for anyone. My faith is the fire burning within me, and you have no right to extinguish it. The room falls into a deadly silence, broken only by Michael's ragged breathing. He sits there, hands limp, the microphone clattering onto the table with a harsh clack. The online screens erupt with thousands of comments, but he no longer cares. He had wanted to break her, but instead she shattered his arrogant shell, exposing a truth he couldn't face, that some people are stronger than any words he could throw at them. The room remains steeped in that deadly silence after Caroline's final declaration, but Michael isn't one to surrender easily. A cold glint flashes in his eyes, like a cornered beast with one last bite left in it. He bends down, trembling hands retrieving the microphone, then stands abruptly, pointing at Caroline with a sinister smile. His voice cuts through the stifling air, sharp as a blade. Don't declare war on me just yet, Caroline. You talk so grandly about living authentically, about faith that needs no proof, but I have evidence. Evidence you can't deny. He brandishes a stack of papers, his voice quivering with a mix of triumph and rage. In 2018, you appeared at a charity fundraiser at St. Mary's Church, didn't you? Reports show that fund lost $50,000 and you were one of the organizers. No one could trace the money, but you? You've been living just fine, still traveling around preaching about kindness and authenticity. So tell me, Caroline, what is your faith? Is it what helps you sleep soundly after pocketing money from the poor, or just an excuse to dodge responsibility? Murmurs ripple through the technical crew, and the online screens explode with fierce comments. She's a fraud. I knew it. Caroline stands there, her hands clenched so tightly her nails dig into her skin, but her face remains unchanged. Inside her, a storm surges, not from fear, but from the painful memories of that incident flooding back. She remembers 2018 clearly. She had worked unpaid for months to organize that fundraiser, sleeping just 4 hours a night, even selling her old car to cover costs. And when the money disappeared, she took responsibility, not because she was guilty, but because she didn't want the poor people they were helping to lose faith and kindness. She had chosen silence not out of shame, but to keep her pain from becoming a public spectacle. But now, Michael had dug it up, turning it into a bullet aimed at her. She takes a deep breath, her eyes never leaving Michael, now blazing like an unquenchable flame. When she speaks, her voice is low but powerful, each word landing like a hammer. You think you've struck gold, don't you, Michael? You think you can wave those papers around and turn me into prey for you to tear apart? Fine. I'll give you the truth, not to justify myself to you, but to show you how shallow you are. In 2018, I spent 6 months working unpaid to organize that fundraiser, sleeping 4 hours a night, selling my old car to make up for the costs. And when the money went missing, do you know who took responsibility? Me. Because I didn't want the poor people we helped to lose faith in goodness. I stayed silent when the fund manager fled with $50,000, not because I was guilty, but because I didn't want to turn my pain into a circus for people like you to chew over. She steps closer, now just an arm's length from Michael, her gaze piercing through him. You want proof of my faith? Here it is. While you were writing cheap articles for clicks, I used the last of my savings to buy medicine for an elderly woman no one cared about just weeks after that incident. While you were mocking others, I went even though I wasn't the one who took the money. My faith isn't something for you to measure with money or those papers you're waving. It's the grit in my bones, the force that keeps me standing when the world wants me to kneel. Michael stumbles back a step, his hand trembling, the stack of papers fluttering to the floor with a dry rustle. But he still roars, his voice now faltering as he's backed into a corner. You think those stories will save you? You still haven't proven anything. The world doesn't care about your kindness. They want the truth. They want to see you take responsibility. You can't hide behind empty words forever. Karoline smirks, not out of disdain, but because she senses the desperation in his voice. She tilts her head, her voice now slow but sharp as a scalpel slicing into his soul. Hide? I'm not hiding, Michael. I'm standing here, before you, before the whole world, with all the scars life has etched into me. You want the truth? The truth is that this world, and you, prefers to judge rather than listen. The truth is, you don't care about kindness or faith. You just want a head to mount on your wall as a trophy. But I won't give you that. My faith isn't for you or anyone to weigh or measure. It's the fire I carry in my heart when I forgave the man who beat my father to death, when I fed my brother through days of hunger, when I chose to live authentically even when called a failure. You say the world wants me to take responsibility? I say the world should look at itself first. Look at how it turns a blind eye to others' pain, how it glorifies people like you just because you shout the loudest. She pauses, her eyes locking onto Michael, her voice now dropping to a whisper but carrying profound power. Faith isn't something to display, Michael. It's something you live through every day. Every choice, when no one's watching, when no one cares. You want proof? Look at my life. A string of times I've been knocked down but still got back up, not for fame, not for money, but because I know who I am. What about you? What do you live for? To dig into others' pasts or to run from yourself? Don't lecture me about responsibility when you can't face your own reflection in the mirror each night. Michael stands frozen, his mouth agape but silent. The papers at his feet are now just meaningless trash. The online screens fall silent for a moment, then erupt with messages. She burned him. This is the truth. He had wanted to use evidence to break her, but instead she turned it into a mirror reflecting his own emptiness. Karoline turns, walking out of the studio with the bearing of someone who has not only survived a battle, but weathered a storm of doubt and hostility. She didn't win by defeating Michael. She won by standing firm, turning her pain into strength and staying true to herself, even if the world turned its back. For her, the battle wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about keeping the fire in her heart burning, no matter who tried to extinguish it. Michael remains alone in the now cold and empty room. He stares at the scattered papers, then at the lifeless microphone on the table. For the first time in his career, he feels not just defeated, but stripped bare. not by Caroline, but by the questions she hurled at him. What do you live for? To dig into others' pasts or to run from yourself? He has no answer, and that silence weighs heavier than any defeat he's ever faced. When the lights fade, when the sharp questions have been thrown and all judgments have settled, only one truth remains. Not everyone who shouts the loudest holds the truth. Not the one holding the microphone has the right to judge. And not everything needs to be proven to be real. What about you? Have you ever felt you had to prove yourself just to be accepted? Have you ever been judged for not meeting others' expectations? Do you dare to stand firm when the world wants you to kneel? Because in the end, strength isn't in what we say, but in what we live. The world doesn't define who you are. The way you choose to live will answer that for you. So, will you live on your terms or on the terms the world wants to impose?